Ce sont les affaires du monde. Je porte son espoir dans mon cœur. Et si mes intentions ont ça.
Welcome to our channel Lightling Vision. Mother explained in part 1 that the politicians are a reflection of the people. Welcome, Mother.
Thank you, Nazar.
So I have a hard time to picture this image, but we do reflect on the politicians. So the politicians
give that reflection back.
Yes.
That's it.
So it's quite complicated to understand, but it is. I can see it clearly.
Well, it's just a phrase, but if I give an example, you will better understand it. For instance, you have seen that for ages, the rich and wealthy and mighty have dominated the poor. And the poor, in the depth of themselves, the poor did not agree. And then one day came the French Revolution. They cut off the heads of many rich, and the poor said, now it's us who will govern. And what did you see? You could see that in no time, the ones that were leading, coming out of the people, the children of the poor, in some way, were doing exactly the same things that they had been reproaching for ages to the high and mighty. That's to say, nothing had changed. And that's what I mean reflection. So, still, the ones who were at the head of the society, even though suddenly it were the poor who were governing because they had put aside the rich and the wealthy. The poor suddenly were governing the poor, their own people, in exactly the same way as the rich had done it for ages. Now, is there somebody who will say that something has changed, that something had changed for the poor? No, there were just a handful of them that were governing, and they were suddenly rich and mighty. But everybody was still in the same situation at the base of society. The working class had gained nothing out of the French Revolution in the beginning. And that's what they very quickly realized. But it was a shock. Because they thought when people came out of their own classes, they would treat them better, and it was not true. And very often they were even worse. And that is what I meant to say with the ones you have above you. Reflect something in you. It's very difficult to understand and even more difficult to accept, but it's the truth. Because those poor men, mainly men, during the French Revolution, that were suddenly in the power situation, what did they reflect to the poor? Well, they still reflected the same thing. That means that the ideal, all the poor in society were cherishing in the depth of their being, was to become a rich and mighty man. Well, that's what they had. Whether they were the ancient aristocrats or the new poor that had become mighty. That's what they had in front of them. And that's what I call reflection.
So it's not only what we do, but it's also what we think and what we desire.
It's what you are, unfortunately. What you, in the depth of your being, cherish as your ideal. That's what you will see in front of you. Now you can say that it's not true. But nothing will change unless you have to accept this of yourself. And then you say, I have to change it. And the shock that came out of the French Revolution when the poor saw that nothing had changed for them, that shock changed something, and suddenly they started, in the depth of their being, thinking in terms of, yes, but perhaps we should ask for other things, but only material things. But that was only the beginning. And the first shock made it possible for the new leaders, the ancient poor, to be taken away, and it did not go on with only the poor leaders. They also were decapitated. But something did change, because there was a widening of the consciousness of the poor and the rich. But it was only the beginning, and it still took 200 years more before things finally started changing, little by little. But it was the beginning. But it was the beginning of thinking, yes, but what is my ideal? And we are still thinking and reflecting on it. We have not attained our goal. So we are still too much materialistic. The ideal we cherish in our lives is not so ideal. And that's what we are not conscious of. I mean, we see it from each other, but the difficulty is we do not see it from ourselves.
That's
and it's
amazing.
Yes, that's the most amazing thing that in human life. Everybody sees what's your problem. You just don't see it yourself. But you can become aware of it little by little by looking around you and looking what's the mirror of life. And then you see in the politicians that you have in front of you, you see what the majority of society cherishing inside. And that is logic, because we're still trying to change our direction, and that will take a long time. Or as I said, it's already taking us 200 of years. Mm-hmm. It has been taking us 200 of years.
So, Mother, could we say that when we criticize, is it automatically that we have something to do with it?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, that will make you less. Yes, that's true. As soon as you criticize, you have to say. You can say, "Oh, he doesn't do it like that. He doesn't do it the way he should," and then you should add, "as like me," because that's why you see it. It is very difficult to accept that for human beings, because it makes you very vulnerable. But
people don't want to see. People don't want to.
No,
see
because
that.
it's not beautiful. It's not beautiful. But it's the only way to change something.
So when we judge, when we criticize, it means we have a lot of work to do on our own personality.
Yes.
And then once we realize this and we change that, there's hope for good leadership.
You have to understand that when you criticize or when you judge, and you start very often with the politicians, I mean in politics, there's almost no domain in life where they criticize and judge as much as in politics. They do it all the time. They criticize the party in front of them, their own support in their own party. Everybody criticizes everybody. But the difficulty is that nobody realizes that what he's criticizing, it's a reflection of himself. For 90% at least. But that's another discussion. I mean, it's important, but that it will take time for people to realize that. Because you have to understand that the glasses you're looking through, that's your own deformation.
Because it takes courage to be a politician, because everybody is criticizing them.
Yes, it's even worse. It's even worse. I mean, I think those people have a lot of protection from the angelic realms, because it's very dangerous. Criticism on the level of a whole of society or a country, that can kill a man. Mm. And unless he's protected from above, no, I would not like to be a politician, because Many of them get sick. Unfortunately, I would say, fortunately, many of them do not stay long. The ancient system was better. When there were kings and queens, they were there for just the act of performing and being there and showing off, and the politicians were behind them, between the walls of the building of the government, so they were more protected. You didn't see them so much. Nowadays, politicians, they have to show up in front of the public, and they're in the magazines and in the newspapers. That is the danger, because in the past you didn't see them so much, the politicians. They were behind the doors, and the ones you saw, as I already said, were the ones who were made for their job, that were the kings and the queens. But people did not criticize kings and queens so much, because they didn't make the politics.
Mm-hmm.
And that was better. Nowadays situation for a politician is not ideal, because they're exposed all the time to criticism, and that is not healthy. But that's another question. I believe that, but it might still take time. But the way humanity evolves, 100 years is nothing. And then I talk about the whole of a society. And that's one of the reasons why you should take your own evolution apart. You can evolve more quickly. And as I already said in the first video, basically politics do not have too much to do with you on a daily basis. You can evolve quite well the way you want, unless you want that everything just comes like that and you don't have to do anything, and that's the real problem. If you want to make the effort, if you want to grow, if you want to understand, if you want to read, if you want to think, if you want to meditate, you can do almost everything. I would say everything. No politician will hinder you. You can do it in your own room, in your own house. And that's where you should do it. And that's what you should do. That is the only thing that will help you evolve, that will create a better next life for yourself. And you will be more, you will be less vulnerable for the highs and lows of politics in this life. But politics, even that realm of life grows, because life doesn't leave us alone. A country has highs and lows, and at this moment we live a low with the coronavirus. We get hits, and so we have to start thinking. Politicians also. So I would say, do not expect too much from politicians, because you can change. You can grow there where you are in your life. And that is what will make politics, on the long run, change. And it's what will make this world better. Do not expect so much from politicians. No. But expect a lot from yourself if you work. And that will make the change for you, and as I already said, and for the society. Mm-hmm. And as you will come back in your next life, you will find a better society somewhere on this earth, if you work now. Mm-hmm. So I would almost say, leave them more alone, those politicians. Of course you have to vote, is that the word? Of course you have to vote, because you're a citizen of this society. But do not criticize too much. That will not help them. And it's not where change begins. Change begins in your house and with yourself. I think we should see politics more on the long run, for over the years. Not judge too quickly on 1, 2, 3 years. Mm-hmm. Unless it's a very critical situation, like in a war, or perhaps now with a virus. Then you have to react. And strangely enough, nobody reacts.
Exactly.
But you can always do something, and that's what you should do, and that's where you should do it yourself. And then things will change in a country, but for yourself in the first place. You have to meditate about it. You're dependent on politics on the long run, but you're not dependent on it in a short term, when I speak in short terms. And basically everything depends on you, what you do with your life, because that's what's creating your future. In any country you will be born again in your next life. That's all I can say.
Thank you, Mother. So I hope you enjoyed this video and that you can reflect with us about criticizing and judging other people, because it has such a big impact, as we can see, on our politicians and our leaders. So subscribe so you don't miss the next video, and listen to the beautiful music, and look also at the website Lightning Art. You'll find some little gems there. So we'll see you very soon. Have a nice day.
Ce sont les affaires du monde. Je porte son espoir dans mon cœur. Et si mes intentions ont sa bénédiction, elles apportent à tous le bonheur. Chaque jour des décisions à prendre, chaque jour de nouveaux défis. Il n'y a aucun point de vue à défendre. La sincérité, c'est la meilleure stratégie. Tellement d'opinions à inclure, parfois des idées préconçues. Mais si nous pensons tous à l'ensemble, aucune voix ne reste sans issue. Ce sont les affaires du monde. Je porte son espoir dans mon cœur. Et si mes prévisions ont sa bénédiction, elles apportent à tous le bonheur. Ce sont les affaires du monde. Je porte son espoir dans mon cœur. Et si mes créations ont sa bénédiction, elles apportent à tous le bonheur. Ce sont les affaires du monde. Je porte son espoir dans mon cœur. Et si mes créations ont sa bénédiction, elles apportent à tous le bonheur. Ce sont les affaires du monde. Je porte son espoir dans mon cœur. Et si nos créations ont sa bénédiction, elles apportent à tous le bonheur.